Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So we got another bit to bolt to the little Micro B, and this one is a GPM part. It's the blue anodized chassis. So this one is part number LMB016B because it's a blue one. So let's bring in for a close-up look and see how many of these screws shear off. We've lost two so far and had to buy new bits. Still got the front shock tower. I still got to order that one because we got a screw sheared off in it. But yeah, let's bring in for a close-up look and see how we get on with this one. So for this one, let's start by getting it out of its packaging. And I must admit, it looks really nice. We got some nice little CNC machined marks in the side bits, and we don't need the plastic guardrails on. It does feel incredibly light. We have got the GPM racing logo on the bottom, but we're basically going to need to fit this there. Now, looking at this, there's a few differences. So we don't have this hole, or this hole. So that's the entire of the rail on both sides that we don't have, but the rest of parts look the same. So let's start by removing some screws. So first off, we have the front bumper. Let's get a magnetic tray so we don't lose any of these little screws. So we're going to have to take these two screws out first. This should let us remove our front bumper. So we're now going to need to remove this screw on the front, which we're going to have to swap out our 1.5mm for the 050. So that's a tiny screw out of there. And then looking at the rest of this front housing, so now we're going to need to pop both these off, which these are still the Endura ones, so they'll pop off extremely easy. Then we've got the Endura ball studs, so we're going to be able to remove these with the 050. So far so good, we haven't got anything sheared off. So next we've got these two screws, one on either side and the smaller ones in front of it. So we're going to have to pop them off. The smaller ones, they're going to unscrew with the 050 driver. So that's quickly got them off. Then we're going to need the bigger 1.5mm for the rear screws. Now the plastic towers are not going to be used anymore because they're on the side rails, and on this one we've got these built in. So let's have a look where we're at now. We should be able to slide all the suspension apart now, and that should move across. And for the most part, that should let all the steering move out the way, and it'll let you get down to the two screws, and we should be able to now unscrew both of these and get the last part of this suspension off. Now for this, I would transfer this straight away over onto the new chassis. So we're going to remove that. We're going to transfer it straight over to his new chassis, and it does fit in perfectly well. And just be careful as you're screwing these in. You don't want to be going too tight with it. You don't want to be snapping these off because you're now going metal into metal. And if this was a 10th scale and you're going metal into metal, I would say you're probably better off to use some thread lock. With such a small scale RC and how small these screws are and how many I've had shear off already, I would not advise thread locking these. So if we look at our steering mechanism now, one thing we can do is either leave all this together and we can transfer it over, or if you find it easier because it's getting a bit unwieldy, we can pop these arms off and we can move the suspension to one side for a moment. So we're now down to our basically the chassis and the rear end. So for this, I'm going to flip this over. So for this, you're going to want the 1.5mm driver, and we're going to work our way down this chassis removing screws. So first off, I'm going to get rid of the side rails as they're no longer going to be part of the build. And I'm just wondering if the built-in side rails of this GPM chassis, I'm wondering if they now give us enough room to change the pinion without any fouling. I do know a number of guys when racing, when they're wanting to change lights of the pinion gear, they're basically cutting the end of the rail off to allow them to quickly change out the gearing. So realistically, it shouldn't be too bad swapping this chassis out now. We've got all the screws. So if we work our way down the actual chassis, we've got these screws that hold our servo. So once your front screws are removed, that's your servo free. Next, I believe this is the battery assembly, tie down or base, whatever you want to call it. And so far every one of these screws have been the same size and same thread, so it's not too bad for getting these mixed up or anything. That should be as battery base free. Then we've got these 4 screws that hold all his rear end together. So I'm just going to drop these onto that chassis for the time being, just to keep them separate. I think these are slightly longer by the looks of it than the rest of the screws we've been removing. It's hard to tell because there's not a lot of difference in size in any of them. So basically we've now got everything in position and we can just fasten it back on. So if we get his new chassis, flip it over, you can position this on first and we can screw that in. So for this, we're just going to have to take 4 of our screws that we've already removed, and just be really careful when you're screwing these in. They're incredibly fine threads. So once we've got them in, that's those 4 screws back in, we can start dropping this chassis back in place. And I usually find it easier to get all 4 of these started. You seem to have less chance of cross threading and stripping the threads out. And again, I wouldn't use thread lock in these because it's such fine threads and you've got to be so careful not to over tighten anything. Then we've got to line up our actual servo mounts, which shouldn't be too bad. You've got locating pins on them, so it will clip in, and we've just got 2 more screws to get these in, and these are the 1.5mm. And I've got to hand it to GPM, their parts up to now do seem to fit really nice. All these have gone on absolutely perfect. So if we flip this back over, and we can got the lovely task of wrestling with these tiny little connections and these little pins, what we've got to get in our steering rack to get that lined up. So basically we've got to get our steering arms back on. So you're going to want to position the arms one at a time and get our pins back in. And the tricky part is managing to do this without all the steering mechanism flying apart, which is really annoying. So we've got to get both them in. Then we have to get this in place and then lower this on. Whilst making sure that none of the steering flies out at the same time, which is why I say leave them arms off. And then we just need to wiggle all this around until everything sits down. So It's not something I'm going to be able to get on camera because I've basically got to get it so I can see all the way around it. But as you can see, that's kind of what we're aiming for. You want this in place, and you want to make sure that these arms, the little pins that go through, are sat correctly into the top plate. And then once you get it all positioned, you should be able to put these screws in and get the back fastened down. So let's get that done and make sure everything's where it needs to be. So basically, once we got it all in position, we've got the two of these smaller screws. Just be very careful as you tighten them down. I would just get them started. So the thinner long screws, they need to go in to help locate it. Then we've got the much thicker screws. These can go in just behind. And certainly getting this front back together is definitely the most awkward. Then you want your dome-headed screw in the front of this, and this will hold our little front plate on that keeps us hinge pins and everything in place. And while we're here, we can drop our little ball joints back on, and again with all these, don't go crazy tight with them. So we should now be able to clip these bits back on. Then we've got our steering arms. Then I can just finish fastening down the screws that hold Topper's bulkhead in. And once we've got these on, we can flip it over. Should be able to get our front bumper on. And I believe they now do that in aluminium as well. So we've got our two screws back in there, and we pretty much should be good to go now. There's definitely a lot more room around the gears with these. There's no issues with that at all, getting to the pinion or anything. So yeah, it does feel nice and tight. Really does fit well. No issues with steering fitment. That seems to be absolutely fine. So yeah, I've got no binding on the steering rack or anything. Everything's screwed down. It all fits well. I like the colour match of it. You've got these bits at the front now are much stronger than the plastic. So yeah, overall, I think that fits rather well. It looks really, really nice. I have seen a few companies now doing these as sort of thumb screws, which would make it easier to flip this up to swap the battery out if you're racing and you've got multiple batteries, so you don't have to worry about how quick you can get them charged up. We do have a whole bunch of these chassis screws left over now because we're not using the original rails or the original chassis. Looking at it, you could probably leave them on, so I don't think there'd be an issue if you didn't unscrew these and you just left them in place. And for me, I'm just going to screw them back onto the chassis because I know where they are then. But yeah, I don't think, after looking at it, I don't think you actually need to undo any of them to get anything off, because we are removing the screws from top of that as well. So yeah, definitely a learning curve stripping this little thing down, but let's wrap this one up. So there we have the GMP, so it's the LMB016B blue anodized chassis for the little Micro B. Only awkward bit is assembling this front. I do these videos so I can make any mistakes and it's easier for you to watch and then not make them. So these chassis rails, you don't really need to take them off unless you're stripping it down for a reason. So the 3 screws down either side, you can just leave them. When you remove these, that'll come off with chassis. But yeah, other than that, seemed pretty straightforward. The only awkward bit is lining this front up, but it were awkward swapping it with the aluminium bits. And it's always awkward doing that and working on it with the way the little pins go through anyway. But yeah, just a little bit fiddly. Take your time and you can put it together absolutely perfectly. And yeah, I do like the way this little thing's coming together now. Hopefully, fingers crossed, with no disasters, but over the next few weeks, hopefully I'm going to get to take this to a track and give it a good test. We have fixed the issue with the diff now, so just by stripping and rebuilding that diff, yeah, works absolutely fine. Not got a problem with it no more. Don't know if it was just something that fell in there. The shocks and everything, no leaks, still feel absolutely fine. Feel nicely damped. Still running the Endura tie bars and everything. But I have got the GPM set in if these pop off all the time when we start racing it. But yeah, sorry it's taking quite a while to get running videos, but unfortunately I have to work 12-hour shifts and to pay for all this stuff to bring you content. So yeah, I don't hate my job, but it does take up a lot of my time and doesn't give me as much time as I'd like to make the videos. On top of that, I've been doing a hell of a lot of stuff for Fly Sky as well, which you guys seem to enjoy, so I really don't mind doing that. But thanks a lot for watching Wtf Rc Cars. Hopefully you find this useful, entertaining, bit of both, just like listening to my incessant ramblings. So don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family if you've got friends and family that you'd like to bore stiff listening to my incessant ramblings, and catch you guys again in the next one.